Hello, I'm Michel Gagné, and you are listening to the Real-Time Visual Effects Podcast, where wizards reside.
You have a gift. You have a passion for creation. There's something inside you that wants to express itself, and that something has led you to explore the world of visual effects, a place where magic happens, and the only limitation is your imagination. All the greatest artists in the world started somewhere, learning and growing into the people they are today. You being here is the first step to building your legacy as an artist. Learn from the best and brightest in the real-time visual effects community. Sharpen your skills and be your best self. Hey, what's up everybody? Welcome to episode 14. Today's interview is with Florian Smolka. He's a VFX artist over at Mimimi Games and has recently reduced Desperados 3 out into the ether. One of the cool things about this game and some of the past titles he's worked on is this research of isometric kind of like strategy games, almost in that CRPG space. And it's so cool to hear about Florian's challenges and experiences working in a camera angle, creating visual effects from there. So without further ado, let's jump in and hear what Florian has to say.
Here is your host, Travis McCallum.
Hey everybody, welcome to another episode. Today's our interview guest, Florian Smolka. He is a visual effects artist at Mimimi Games, and he's worked on amazing titles like the recent Desperados 3, along with other VFX works with Shadow Tactics, Blade of Shogun, and Last Tinker, City of Colors. Florian, how you doing today, man?
Hey man, pretty good. It's quite sunny in Munich today, so a bit sweaty, but it's good.
Yeah, summer is in full swing. The 4th just happened here in the US, so lazy Sunday here in Dallas. Hey man, so I want to hear all about the awesome effects that you recently released with Desperados 3 and some of your other games, but let's just kind of take a step back and tell me, Florian, how did you get into visual effects?
Basically, I was studying game design at like a local university, and there you do quite a few of projects with other students, and I was basically the guy in the first project who did the VFX part, and then because you did it in the last project, you do it in the next, and then when you finish university, I was like, well, maybe there's a job for that. And well, that's basically how it all started. And if I think back like to my childhood, basically it is rather obvious that this could have been a path for me because I was always like interested in fireworks, and my first 3D renderings were like laser cannons, and I was trying to make fire and water and things I always admired in like RPG games, basically most of all the Eastern RPGs like Final Fantasy and that kind. We always did the huge spell effects and crazy over the top VFX, and this always got me.
Yeah, I love JRPGs and the awesome unique spells that they have. And you think about the Final Fantasy, how there's kind of that progression with Fire 1, Fire 2, Fire 3.
Yeah.
The more complex the effect becomes over time. But of course, back in those days, it was like 2D, kind of almost like sprite sheet, flip books where it was like hand drawn and everything. Man, effects have come a long way. You mentioned that you had started in game design. Like, what kind of like drove you to say, I want to create video games in the first place? And did you have an area you were thinking of starting in, or you didn't really know where in games you were going to fit when you jumped into the program?
Yeah, pretty much the later part. I had no idea what I wanted to do specifically, but I knew that I wanted to pursue like a more visual role. And so I always liked the programming or the concept of it, but I knew I wouldn't be like a full-fledged programmer. And I was more interested in the visual part, and I think that also led me to being a VFX artist because it's like in the middle of the technical and the visual part, and so it makes total sense to do that. But what got me into like studying game design was just basically my mom, because one day she read in the local newspaper, that there was an article about the game design study. They had like an open door day. She told me about the school and, hey, don't you want to go there and have a look at it? This might be something for you. And it was a really rainy day, and was like, no, I want to play games and stuff. But in the end, she convinced me, and I sat there and listened to the professor like telling us what the courses will be about. And I was like, okay, that's fun. Or I already looked into that, and I already know that, and this looks interesting. And then, holy shit! And so it basically was pretty clear to me after that that I need to, I don't know, yeah, a career in making games.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah.
I know that the definition for what real-time visual effects is kind of debated and is very ambiguous. I was curious, in your own words, what do you feel like the definition for real-time visual effects is? What does it mean to you?
It's a hard one, but I'd say it mostly VFX is there for helping to sell the world, to make it more believable. Because, well, if you erase all the VFX of a top-notch game, the world would seem rather dull and empty. The lighting might be good and the basic animations might be good, but it's missing, it's like the parts which connects everything, and like the dust steps from a character, or like the leaves blowing in the wind, and I don't know, splashes in the water, and just helps to, well, really sell the world and make it feel more alive. And it helps to, I don't know, increase basic immersion of games, like so you can really lose yourself into the game. So
it's really cool that you talk about how it connects everything together and makes it like this living, breathing world that immerses the players. Visual effects are often, I guess, what we call subtle. You don't really see them despite being called visual effects, but you feel them. And you know when they're there and you know when they're not there.
Yeah. Also like a, I don't know, bit of a difficult part of being an VFX artist, because when you don't work for like, I don't know, Diablo type spell effects that are obviously like super cool and flashy, most of your work is like doing more subtle things as you just saw, and nobody goes like, oh man, it's like footsteps effects were amazing. Well,
hey, I know you've been in the industry for a while now. You know, thinking back 5 years ago or even longer, what were some things that you know now that you wish you had known starting out?
I think it would be cool if I knew shaders a bit more back then, because I basically self-taught myself like writing shaders, and I'm still not like a super good shader coder, but it's enough to make decent looking effects, and I get the basic concepts of them. And this really helps, like being able to really sell your own idea and don't need to consult a coder every now and then, because you just need a shader that does this or that. Really helps to do that on your own. And
how did you go about teaching yourself shaders? Like, what are some advice you have for people who want to jump into that?
It's a hard one. I think it's a lot easier these days, because a lot of people in the community are pushing the teaching aspect of it. They're releasing good tutorials and podcasts and stuff. And when I started, it was pretty much like an empty space. There was few videos on YouTube and some books, but I don't know, books aren't really good for teaching that kind of stuff. I think, well, if you want a specific formula on how to, I don't know, simulate some waves or something, that's okay in a book. But I think in a visual YouTube tutorial or something, you can teach that a lot better. So, well, more advice. I know, get someone who knows it already and ask them for they can teach you, if it's be it for like in their free time, or if you have money to give them.
Did you have any mentors that you reached out to back in the day to kind of help you learn about shaders?
I was lucky enough that we had someone in our company that was a bit more, who had more knowledge in the shader part, but not as found as some other people are. But it was enough to help me a bit in the beginning, and then it was just, I don't know, trying to do stuff and trial and error. And the first shaders I wrote, I don't know, I think they're pretty crappy, but they worked. So, well, and that's what it counts in the end.
They always say that that's one of like the core skills that any VFX artist needs, is to be a problem solver who can really figure things out. And like you just said, trial and error is the best way to get the results that you want. you're going to struggle and
A lot,
fail
yeah.
before you finally succeed. So thinking back to that, Florian, where's somewhere that maybe you failed at, and how did you handle failure and adapt to it and grow from it?
I think I have no like specific answer for that. Like I failed at this, if making this effect or whatnot. It's more I failed at making compromises, I think, because I'm pretty much a perfectionist. And if you don't know how to make things like the smart way, you compensate with like working overtime. And this might work for a while, but in the end, it gets to you, and you have to be really careful about that. And so this is something I failed, I would say. And it's gotten better. I got much more aware of it, and I really had the pleasure that, or like, was lucky enough that our company is actively against crunch. Sometimes we all know that you can't avoid it, but never was there a point where someone higher up the ladder told me that I had to work more. It was always me who strive to, I don't know, to make stuff better. So don't be so hard on yourself.
And that's always like one of the biggest challenges of visual effects is like, when do you know when an effect is done? I mean, it never really is done. You can tweak it and iterate it forever, but at some point, we all need to tell ourselves, Florian, that we've done enough and settle. And just now it's the producer's problem or your art director's problem.
Yeah.
Hey, I wanted to ask you, are you working with other visual effects artists on your team? Or are you the sole one right now? Or have you worked with
I was
artists in the past?
For the longest time, I was alone in our company, and I didn't work with anyone else on that role. But I think, March last year, I got a colleague, like a second VFX artist. And this is something I wanted for a long time, because it really helps to be able to talk about certain problems and share ideas and just brainstorm together. And this is something really was hard for me for years, that I had no one I could directly talk to. Of course, I had other VFX artists I knew and ask them questions, but it's a lot easier if you have someone like right across the table. So this really helps. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, it is really nice, like you said, as time has gone by and the internet has opened up this collaboration for VFX artists to connect globally, but there is a big difference where they're physically in the same area as you. I'm curious, with the time you've had to spend working on a team with other VFX artists, and maybe even just talking with other VFX artists across the internet, even looking at their work on sites like ArtStation, what are some of the things that you're looking at in your own work or the work of others that tells you whether it's good VFX or great VFX?
I always, and that's something that brought me into games in general, is I want to know how they did it. I want to know the workings behind it. So I always analyze certain VFX, and I admire like when something is really powerful yet simple in the making. Because if you throw enough particles and shaders and whatnot on top of something, in the end it will certainly look good. But what is hard to make something really simple but yet powerful. And what I don't really like, or which I consider in a way a bad VFX, is when I am able to make out the individual building blocks of the VFX itself. So, for example, if I see the single particles in a smoke cloud, so it's not a whole thing anymore. It's like single particles where I can make out the individual sprites. Or if it's the same fire sprite animation next to each other's without an offset or something. That's really these tiny details, or some obvious tiling that you can make out. It's not super easy to always be perfect in this regard, and it's totally fine if you fail sometimes, and because sometimes you just don't have enough time to put in more work to make it look really good. But that's something I don't really like. If I can really see, it makes it feel gamey to me if I can see exactly what it's made of.
Right. And I kind of get the impression that here you're looking for how organic is an effect. How does it kind of blend together? And create some kind of like story element and less of a, oh, it's just here for the sake of being here. And I often think back to like Julian Love's Diablo GDC talk, and he's like showing these pictures of these different effects. And he's like, what is this? What is this? It's like 5 particle systems like crammed together. And what is it trying to tell? What is the story, the purpose behind it? Maybe that's what you're saying. I could be wrong.
No, it's kind of right. Yeah. As I said, if I can really make out like single sprites, so if I see the individual texture of it, if it just blends together like it being one organic smoke cloud, that's the way I want it to be. But I can see the single particles and what the texture of a single particle is, then it's not as good to me.
Okay.
And something I wanted to say, it's a bit on a more, because you asked what I feel like when I look at the work of others.
Yeah.
On a more darker note, like the past 2 years, I kind of avoided looking too much at the work of others, because there's just so much amazing stuff out there. And if you're like in the middle of a production, you sometimes don't have the time to evolve. You just have to finish stuff with knowledge you have at this point. And if I look at like all the amazing VFX out there, I'm always thinking, oh shit, I'm not good enough. I have to get better. I have to practice. I have to try this and that. And so I avoided looking at other stuff too. I don't feel that. And I know it's like not the best approach, but it worked at the time for me. And since the game is released and I have more time again, it's gotten better, but it's, something I really struggled for a time.
Yeah, it's really crazy that we have imposter syndrome in our work, especially when we're looking at the industry as a whole, and we're like, do I really deserve to be here?
Yeah.
There's so many talented people here. How can I consider or measure myself on the same playing field as all these legends? I guess is kind of the message there. But your team hired you for a reason. They brought you on board for a reason because they believed in you. So I just think that we need to have more confidence in our own abilities and our own creativity and our own imagination. We are all capable of greatness.
And what personally really helped me with my imposter syndrome is when I teach someone else something, or if I hold a talk, and because then it's something when you really have to explain what you do, then you get it more it's not that easy as you think it is. And you know more that you think you know. So it keeps things into perspective for me.
So I'm curious to know what you're curious about right now. What's got your mind in the visual effects industry? What are some of those trends you're seeing out there that, really kind of captured your attention?
Well, first of all, I would say like real-time fluid simulations, all AmberGen stuff. And if you can have that in a game engine, then it's like, oh, holy shit. Because then you would, like in a perfect world, you could get rid of like baking all your like fluid sims into textures, and you can just simulate it in the engine. And oh my gosh, that would be amazing. So, and we are getting there slowly. And there's also already like small scale implementations of that in certain games.
Have you had a chance to use AmberGen in a production environment yet?
No, I wanted to try it, but this is something I have written down for pre-production for the next project.
Yeah, I really, really love being able to see real-time feedback instantaneously on these like fluid or gas sims, so that, I can start implementing it like within a couple minutes or hour, or even within an hour. It's such a big difference from like the film side of how we pre-render things. And, sometimes you like hit that render button, you go home for the night, you come back, and that 30-second clip,
you're not happy.
it may not be what you wanted, and it's like, well, got to do it again. It's just like such a massive difference. And I'm really excited with what Nicholas is doing over at Jenga FX. So we'll see where that goes.
And also like basically hitting in the same notch. It's like the whole ray marching on like basically accurate lighting on smoke and stuff, and really have a depth in smoke clouds. And this is something I'm really looking forward to. It makes it so much more believable. crazy.
Did y'all make Desperados 3 in Unreal or Unity, or would y'all make it in?
It was made in Unity, yes. Yeah.
Like the new Lumens systems that UE5's coming out with, how ray marching just plays such an effect on being able to have this static and dynamic light that adjusts to the different objects. Super exciting how that's going to break out.
Yeah.
Florian, I want to get into your VFX workflow. Can you kind of tell me about what your pipeline looks like from creating effect from start to finish? Could there be a personal piece, or maybe when you were in production with one of your games?
Really depends on where you are in the project, I think, because I don't know if this is something like I do like in a specific way, or it's just common practice. And at the beginning, I tried to like take more time to create more like a library for the project, go into Houdini, render some smoke, and render it in a way I can use it in like really different scenarios over the whole project. Always having that in mind. So at the beginning, stuff normally takes more time until I have a full library of stuff I can work with in the project. And then stuff normally gets a lot easier, and I'm not as busy as like baking new textures and stuff, and I'm trying to reuse as much as I have. And before I touch anything, it's basically a lot of research. Take my sweet time, like looking a lot of National Geographic, YouTube tutorials, animes, whatever. It's animes, by the way, even if you don't like them, they're like an amazing source of inspiration for doing VFX, because it's so much over the top and on point. So in terms of colors and timing, and it's crazy. And something I really keep an eye on is realism, and not in terms of like how it looks. I think it's really important to keep like real world physics in mind when doing VFX. Even if your game is set in a world that has like a different set of rules for physics, you always have to keep in mind what these rules and laws are, because then you have something that really can function in this world. And this is something you have to be really cautious about, and it really helps to make your effects feel good, I think. But it's the same a bit like when you're doing creature modeling, and because some junior 3D artists are often like modeling these amazing looking creatures, but they just don't work. They have like inaccurate anatomy. They couldn't like really move their head or due to whatever. And you have to really think about what you are doing and like able to function. Yeah,
absolutely.
So you have to kind of know the rules first to be
before
able to
you break the rules.
Yeah.
So tell me about what a day in the life of Florian looks like from sunrise to sunset. And let's take a work day, for instance.
Okay.
What's your routine?
Yeah, I'm more like definitely not early bird. I like to sleep in a bit because it's really hard in Bavaria, because shops normally close at 8 p.m. And if you have like an 8-hour work day, you have to it's hard to manage sometimes. And when the weather is nice, I normally bike to work, and then I arrive, have a coffee, and often enough, I'm a bit grumpy when I arrive at work. My colleagues know better than to like flood me with information in the first 5 minutes. Just need some time to adjust. And then we have like in the company, we have a daily stand-up at 11 a.m. and lunch for an hour at 12:30. And the most productive I am in a bit of an afternoon, and then later again in the evening, like from 7 to 9 or something. I really enjoy when the office is more like empty and it's getting dark outside and the world like gets quiet. This is when I can really be productive again. And then I go home, cook something, or with my roommate or girlfriend, or go out with some friends for beers, basically. And then I go to sleep at 1 or 2 a.m.
You are a total night owl.
Yes,
that's awesome though. It's because sometimes people like to get into the office early and have their quiet time, but for you, it's in the nighttime when everybody leaves, and it's like you just have those couple hours to just do you and get your most productive kind of work done.
Yeah.
Cool, man. So I want to know about Desperados 3. Talk to me about some of the effects that you created for that game, and describe to me what are some of the biggest challenges you faced on that project, along with what you feel like was your biggest accomplishment.
Whew, that's a big question. And because I did basically most of the VFX until like Simon, my VFX colleague, arrived in the third year. And this was a huge help because I couldn't have.
And real quick, just tell us about what is Desperados 3 about? What is the game?
Oh, I guess it's a real-time tactics game, like the old Commandos. Maybe you know them. A bit of an old genre, and we kind of our last game, Shadow Tactics, kind of revived the genre because it was pretty much dead for about 10 years. And basically, you have like a small squad of people, up to 5 people with different limited skill sets. And you have a top-down camera, like in a slight military angle, I would say. And then basically you have an objective and a lot of enemies on the map, and you can watch their like view cones where they're looking at. And so it's a matter of like crouching through the landscape and taking them out one by one and fulfilling the object. And some people don't like the comparison, but I think it's pretty accurate. It's a bit like a puzzle game in the end. Because you don't, even though it's real time, you never have this like feeling of being rushed, because each like setup is kind of isolated, and you can, if you clear that setup, then it's on to the next one, and this makes it really kind of relaxing. So
cool.
Should I get back to the VFX part?
Yeah. Okay. Just for context, so the people know. Yeah. And this game just came out at the end of June too, so it's brand spanking new.
2 weeks ago, basically.
Steam, right? We can get it on Steam.
Steam, PS4, and Xbox One. Yes.
Badass.
And there's a demo, so if you, I'm not sure about it, just try the demo and then maybe buy it, maybe don't buy it. So the VFX, when Simon arrived, he really helped me with he did a lot of the UI elements, I did the base of the water stuff. But he really iterated on that and made it look so much better, and could never have done it without him. So I'm really, really super grateful for that. But the things I'm proud of is I had the pleasure of doing all the skill effects for the players, which is pretty cool. And so the more high points of the game, like blowing up a big bridge or like a gate or something like that. And the huge challenge in these types of games is, in general, the camera is pretty far away from what is happening. So you have to find the balance between the size of an VFX, because if a player approaches an enemy and stabs him, then of course there needs to be some blood. And the blood, if you look really close at it, is an insane amount of blood coming out of these poor guys, basically. But when the camera is pretty far away, you still have to make it out, and that's what the balance you have to be aware of. So if it's too little, you don't see it. If it's too big, it looks ridiculous, and this is something you always have to keep in mind.
Yeah, so the isometric camera angle that sets up, the scene. When you're working on your effect, do you preview it from that particular angle and scale from there? Is that kind of what's going through your mind?
I always have the camera pretty close at first to get the base done. Then I zoom out and look at it from the player's perspective. How it will look, and then often enough there's this is too small and this needs to be much more impactful, so you can actually feel it. And so it's a bit of an iteration back and forth, but I find it much easier to work at it when I'm a bit closer with the camera. Cool. And you asked about the challenges, and the biggest challenge of this project, I think, was with the big train bridge, because Desperados is a Western game. There needs to be a bridge that gets blown up. And this was basically the biggest task. I've no idea how many hours I threw at this bridge. It's crazy. And it's over in 10 seconds. But it was a huge learning, because I started using Houdini for Desperados, and I learned a lot when doing this huge bridge explosion. And it's still not perfect. I have a lot to criticize about that, but I think it's good enough. It looks good. It sells what is happening. I'm kind of proud of it, yes.
I'm just curious, how much time did you spend working on that one explosion bridge piece? Was it just a couple weeks or a couple months? Or everybody's always curious about how much time should I spend on an effect,
Yeah, Well, it's something like a special case because I use that to learn a lot of rigid body simulations in general. I don't know, it's weeks, definitely weeks. I would even say that's a lot, but it might be like 6 to 8 weeks in total. So yeah,
And a lot
don't
of it
nail me down on the details, but yes.
and a lot of it was learning. Like you said, you in the beginning of your pipeline, you got to spend a lot of time researching, looking at references and tutorials to kind of pick up that knowledge.
Yeah, that also all of that is in these 6 to 8 weeks. But yeah, it took a huge chunk of time. So the first explosion was really expensive.
And I'm in the same boat right now because I'm learning for a first-person shooter. We're playing laser sights. I'm like, how do you make a laser sight where on the muzzle you've got that little line that connects in dark settings? So I totally get where you're coming from.
Yeah.
So tell me about your biggest accomplishment. Is that it as well? The explosion? That was what you're most proud of the effect you made? Or is there something else that stood out?
I would say so. There's a lot of smaller kind of VFX I just like the tiny details that are also really important in this type of game because you have these huge maps and like I said in the beginning, it's a really important job of VFX in general to help to sell the world, to make it feel more alive. And so I think we really succeeded in that. And Simon also did help me a lot in this regard. And yeah, I think that the whole levels, how they look, how they feel, that's our biggest accomplishment in total. There's so many small, dioramas basically, like a waterfall scene with a small rainbow and tiny details and fish jumping down. And that's I think awesome. The big, beautiful.
So let's swap over to another opportunity you created visual effects for. Shadow Tactics, Blade of Shogun, and also Last Tinker, City of Colors. Tell me a little bit about those experiences and what were some of the effects that you enjoyed making the most? And why was that?
So The Last Tinker was my first big project, for PC, and I think it only came out for PS4, not the Xbox, but yeah, basically PC and console. Before that, I made more mobile games, or smaller type of tank games. And this was a general, challenge in general. And because I didn't really know shit at the beginning, but I think we in total did really succeed in creating something really timeless. And so I'm still to look at it. Even how many years has it been? I don't know. A bunch. And I still love how the game looks actually before this podcast. Playthroughs of The Last Tinker, and I really like that. And for explanation, it's it's a magical world. It's more like an adventure game. It's set in a magical world where everything is made out of these basic materials like paper, paint, and glue and stuff. So the effects were also really stylized and a lot of painterly stuff and magical. And this is something that was really cool. And not to go too much into detail, but there's 3 main colors in the game, like red, blue, and green, and they are tied to certain emotions in the game, which is also a gameplay element. And so I created specific shapes for each color or emotion it is respective to. And this is something I really enjoyed, creating something like a language even, I would say. This was something really cool. And funny side story was, because as I said, there's a lot of paint stuff going on in The Last Tinker. I did made some ink splashes, in the real world, dropping ink to a paper basically and scanning these. I didn't use them for The Last Tinker in the end, but I used them for Shadow Tactics and Desperados for blood decals on the floor. So be creative when creating VFX.
So some of the blood decals that are in your games, they were created from, just taking some ink and dropping it on a piece of paper and just randomly scattering across that paper. And you said, okay, this is blood. And you just transferred that into the world. Yeah,
basically it's just a bit of cool. Isolating them, photoshopping them together, but then you have blood decals. And
And it makes me think about
as
like
simple as that. Yeah.
textures just across the world. They're everywhere around us.
Yes.
And you can just look outside, look at the grass, look at the walls, and you can see patterns, shaped languages, like you've said, all these principles of what create visual effects, they surround us. And anything that we want to create, we can just draw from our surroundings.
Mm-hmm. That's something I draw a lot of inspiration from pretty much everything around me, as I said, and it really helps to have a bit of a background in photography. Because thousands of photos back in the day. I don't do as much because I kind of missing the time for it, but I'm still doing it. And it really helps because in photography, you learn how to capture certain emotions into one frame or certain textures, and like how lighting is important and gives shape to objects. And this really helped me in being like a VFX artist, I think.
Cool, man.
I wanted to get back on what I learned or what I did on shadow tactics, if that's okay.
Yeah.
For a bit, yeah.
Go for it. Go for it.
Yeah, shadow tactics is like the same genre as Desperados, but really different from The Last Tinker. So this was a real challenge because The Last Tinker is like a third-person game, and in Shadow Tactics and Desperados, we have this top-down camera, and there were a lot of learnings. Told you earlier, it's hard to get the right size of effect. So in the beginning, a lot of the stuff was too small, basically. And something I really liked doing in Shadow Tactics was, for example, so you have like one of the characters Takuma has a skill where you can throw a grenade, basically. And depending on where you throw the grenade, the explosion will look different. Like when it's in water, there's water splash, and then dirt, and snow. And this is really something I like, these tiny details to make it more real, the world. I like doing these very much. I really like working on things where I can pour my imagination into, like really let it run wild. And due to like the more realistic type of setting we had, like in Shadow Tactics and Desperados, I'm missing a bit to work on like the fantastic or magical VFX. I want to do a bit more like crazy stuff in the future again. Like in The Last Tinker, that was pretty great. Like really get creative of what are you doing.
Right. There are certain like constraints that exist in realistic effects that
Yes.
you have to adhere to versus stylistic. Take fire, for example. We typically don't see like purple fires, and those each have their own kind of like, themes or styles to them as well. Because if you see like blue and purple, fire, that may indicate that it's some kind of arcane kind of, style. But in realism, we typically don't see that kind of stuff. Maybe in like Sabrina, if you're like a Netflix fan or something, but that's more in the film space. And again, that's more in the supernatural. So I totally.
But also, like there are certain elements that are burned in different colors. Like, is it like copper is burning green? I think. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Which I guess is a good indicator to people that are well knowledgeable in like science, like, that's not using oxygen and whatever. I should know, but I don't know off the top of my head. I feel like any good VFX artist can like list any kind of like component of an element, right? We need to be good chemists as well as good physics.
That's true. That's also like something I see a lot in games, in explosions in general. When you have dynamite, there's in the real world, there's no flashy fireball. Dynamite is a really fast expanding type of explosive. Just like boom, and that's it. You have a small cloud and that's it. There's no like fireball. Fire comes from all different slow burning explosives.
Mm-hmm.
And
hey, so
I'm kind of a nitpicky guy about that.
I know you talked a little bit about your time in school for game design, but people are always wondering whether it's worth going to a formal school system to get their VFX education. So I'm curious to know, what was your big takeaway from learning about games in school, and what would you recommend or advise people who are thinking about going to school for VFX?
Well, normally I don't know about the US. The US is totally different in these types of systems, I guess. But over here, schools that are courses, then normally they are privately and not state funded. So it's a lot more expensive to attend to. So be sure you want to do that because it costs a lot of money. And don't be afraid to be honest to yourself and say, well, that's not something I want to do in the end. And then, quit it earlier and save a lot of money, basically. But for me, it was really worth it because in the end, I met the people I'm working with today. So I could not complain about that. And all these schools have like totally different concepts of how to teach, like game development or game design. And also, like a fun thing, my course was named game design, basically it was really inaccurate because it was more like a game development in general and not game design. And so keep in mind what are the contents of these courses and if that's something you want to do. Because with my school, it was which I found pretty cool, but might not be for everyone. In the first semesters, you had all of us were together and we learned all the art related stuff and a bit of programming related stuff and a bit of producing. So a huge pile of everything basically. And then you had to decide what you wanted to do. And there was only like two ways to go, like more visual type and more like techie type.
Mm-hmm.
But it really helped me to learn a lot of the basics, and it still helps me today. Even if you're like an artist, a full-fledged concept artist, it can help you to communicate with like game designers and coders if you know something about their work and how it's done and using the right type of words, basically the right vocabulary. So I kind of like that aspect, but it might not be for everyone. Also, I really enjoyed being able to have the freedom to experiment, like having these projects with other students. Later, when you have a job, you always have like restrictions. You have to work in a certain frame and do this and do that. And normally you cannot go like full on creative. I want to do super, I don't know, you know what I mean. And this is something you can do in university. You'll find the right people who are behind your idea, or you want to try something a colleague of you just came up with, and just do it. Don't think too much of how realistic it is. Just keep the scope in mind, but most likely you will fail in the beginning because every student project is too big in scope at the beginning. It's always the same. I never saw a single like student project that is like, oh, that's the right scope. You can actually pull that off. It's always too ambitious.
But that's like the learning experience in itself is realizing that, oh my gosh, I did not realize it would take this much effort to do this.
Yes.
In the future, I'm going to scale it down, make it more attainable. And that's why I love these like game jams that like restrict you to create a game in like 24 hours over like 2 days, because it really kind of puts things into perspective. And oftentimes in the real world, like you said, with a real job, there are going to be those constraints. So you get a little bit of business, sense knocked into you, which I know a lot of artists don't really like the business side, but it is important. And it is a reality of the world. We all have to adjust to at some level.
But it should come with experience, like you said. You have to learn that in the end someday.
One of the things that like you said earlier was that you weren't really big into the programming side of visual effects, but you ended up picking up C# and HLSL in your skill toolbox. What kind of prompted you to pick that up, and how has it helped you with your effects? Do you have any examples where you actually used it?
I don't know. The first moment I came into contact with programming was, was it ninth grade, I think. Oh, yeah, something like that. Pretty early, I had an internship at a small movie company, and I had to had the chance to learn like ActionScript from Flash. And this was my first experience in programming. And if you have like the basics down of how a programming language works, it's much easier to pick up others. And in university, I just got into a bit of C# because we already used Unity back then, and it really helped me to be able to like make my own little tools for mundane tasks you just have to do. Like something that comes to mind is something I used in shadow tactics. We have this huge range of trees in the map, and I wrote a small tool that randomly selects trees and puts like leaf emitting particle effects on these trees. So no, just dragging and dropping to single trees, and really saves you a lot of time if you're able to do these like little helpery robot-y tools for tasks. You just it's much better suited for like a script than an actual human being that is good at creative work and not like dragging and dropping the same element to
right. So like
something,
in a sense, you're talking about like automating these repetitive tasks
yes,
a normal human would just be doing the same action over and over and over. Sometimes humans get bored of doing the same thing, or they get tired, where a robot, they're
and you're much too slow for that. Yes. Yes, true. You have to treat your PC as that.
And would you say this is typically geared toward, procedural elements, things that are like the tree example you gave is kind of a randomized element, but at the same time, the effect itself is always going to be very consistent in what it does. Because people often have that kind of like question when it comes to drawing like flip books, for instance. That is not something that a computer can necessarily replicate to the degree that a human can take the pen to the paper and to draw these beautiful shapes. I guess there's like a limitation of randomness that a computer can reach that can never replicate a human's like artistry. There are tasks.
Well, I wouldn't never say never.
Okay, yeah, that's
right
true.
Now, right now it's the case.
Because people are worried sometimes, and maybe you can dispel this myth or, back it up that robots are going to take over our jobs as artists someday, that we're going to become obsolete.
Yeah, we always have these discussions with like the whole procedural generated content and whatnot. I'm more an optimistic person, I would say. Okay. Well, in some ways at least. And I see the positive side of it, because basically what this is doing, it helps us getting rid of these like mundane tasks that a computer is much better at doing. And it leaves us like time to be creative about our work and really create something unique and like really art direct how it looks. And I see it more positive, because there will always be like someone who tells the computer what it needs to do. And that's your job. Like give the computer like good creative instructions and then make him do the shitty work.
That's awesome. I love your infectious optimism. It's very reassuring, Florian. Appreciate it. On a lighter note, and thinking about something amazing that you've done in the past, you actually spent some time doing community service for a children's circus. Can you tell me a little bit about that experience?
Yeah, that's quite unusual, I think. Back in the day, we had like you either had to go to the army for a few months or you had to do civil service, and I chose civil service, and I basically ended up working at a children's circus. And honestly, hands down, I was like 17 back then, and this was one of the best years in my life, and I learned so much about me and others. It's crazy. And one point that comes to mind is I got much better at talking in front of others and be more open and approachable. And so this year really helped me to achieve that. And you know it for yourself, a lot of this industry is like talking to people, connecting with people, and it's much easier if you're open to that and learn how to do it. I know it's much harder for some people, so I don't want to say like this industry is nothing for you. I think the industry should be a lot more welcoming to people like that and just be more inclusive in general. That's another topic. And
across the board, like number one fear, at least here in America, is public speaking. People are afraid to get up and, communicate their thoughts in front of a crowd. But it sounds like you had this amazing opportunity at 17 to really kind of dive in there and practice your social skills and to build your communication and being able to talk to other people and, not be strapped down by anxiety and fear of embarrassing yourself, for lack of better words.
Yeah. And the work with children in general is like really something that, it gives back so much. I always really enjoyed it because children have no like, how do you say it in English? Like something in front of their mouth, like a filter. They have no filter, basically. They just tell you what they think. And I really enjoyed this honesty, because in the adult world, we often don't have that really much. You get lied to your face like on a daily basis. And children are, really, really honest when it comes to that, and really helped me. And another VFX related topic, like working at this children's circus, was like learning how to juggle fire, basically. And which is
actual fire?
Yeah.
Oh gosh.
And it's not as dangerous as it sounds. It looks way more dangerous than it actually is. But
Were
that's
you
the
one
thing.
of those people that like put a sword on fire and stuck it down your throat?
Nope, not
okay.
that. a bit safer than that. Like wielding like one of these sticks where both ends are on fire and swirling it around you and stuff like that.
Like you'd see it like an EDM concert or something.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah. And it's fascinating, and it right into my VFX mind.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed that.
That's so cool.
And also, like a pro was getting a lot of exercise, basically, because it was a lot of workout intensive labor at the circus. And this really helped me survive university, because I did move a lot less there.
Yeah, and children are so like active. It seems like they never run out of energy.
No, they don't.
Being where you are today, do you still find time to like exercise or to get out of your sedentary lifestyle?
Yeah, I had a long time where I didn't do much, but I always used my bike wherever I could, and this something really helped me. And now I've been practicing yoga for 3 years now, and like once or twice a week, basically, and sometimes like little exercises in the evening right before going to sleep. This really helps, because we all know that we have like shitty positions in front of our desks, like really crumpling on the chair and crippling ourselves. And something where yoga really can help you. So don't be afraid to try it. I know it has like a hippie image, but it doesn't need to be that.
Yeah, when
just find a good instructor.
When your coworkers are looking at you at your lunch hour and you're sticking your butt in the air, be like, I flaunt it proud.
Not that this didn't happen before. Yeah. No, it really is important. I can, really say that to you guys out there. Just keep doing some kind of exercise. Like, find the right one for you. It doesn't need to feel like, stressful and work, and it has to be fun for you. But I think that's like a fun activity for all of us. Just find yours. And even just like, if you have the possibility to just walk to your office, maybe do that once in a while.
Healthy life is a healthy mind.
Yes, it is.
Florian, we're ready to get started with the lightning round questions. Quick and easy, just like visual effects. Are you
all right? Totally quick, yeah. And easy.
What is a perfect one-day getaway in the Munich and surrounding area for Germany?
Munich is the top thing about Munich is pretty green, and you can grab yourself a beer, go to the Isar, like the river that runs through Munich, that is actually like so clean. You can, have a swim in there, and actually, it's not that bad if you drink the water. Nothing will happen to you. It's like beautiful. And so do that, or go to one of the beautiful beer gardens or one of the local parks. Munich has a lot of green areas, and also the surrounding areas are pretty amazing, like mountains, forests, lakes. You can do a lot of beautiful things here.
When I come to Germany, I want to come during Oktoberfest so I can really hit up all the different beer flavors. But I'm curious, do you have a recommendation on like some kind of lager or beer that you would recommend, try? What's your go-to? What's your standard?
I grew up grew up sounds really bad, but grew up with Augustina. That's like the most famous local beer brand, and it's actually really good. And there's also like Tegernseer, but you cannot really go wrong with the beers here. They're much better than in some other places in the world, I think.
You can say it.
So,
you can say it.
but yeah, but keep your hands off. Yeah, a warning here: keep your hands off Spaten. So yeah, don't drink that.
I know here in Texas, we have like this super cheap, like $2 kind of like beer cans you can get. They're called like HBR or something. We only drink them because of beer pong, and that was back in my college.
Is it the Pabst Red Ribbon or something?
Yeah, Red Ribbon. I think that sounds right.
Yeah, I tried that.
Tastes like liquid water with like carbonation.
Yes. But I always enjoyed Blue Moon when I was in America. That's something I enjoyed, talking about beers.
What video game or app are you using on your phone that is the most fun?
When it comes to using my phone, I feel like an old man, basically. It's crazy. I develop games for a living, but I have almost no apps on my phone. Like, it's just something that plays music, and I have something for maps, and a huge fan of music in general. So one of the most used apps for me is Shazam, actually, because I have a lot of moments where I go by a bar and they plays a song that sounds interesting, and I put out my phone and do Shazam, like finding out what kind of song that is. That's a useful app for me.
When you're working on your effects, do you have like a playlist you listen to just to kind of get in the zone?
It's so different. But when I do programming work, I like more like non-verbal music, or like instrumental post-rock, for example, or some ambient techno, electro. Yeah, it's something I enjoy when I have to really get into this zone. Okay.
What is your favorite thing to cook or eat?
That's a really hard question for me, because my greatest passion besides my job is cooking. And so being a vegetarian for like 18 or 19 years now, I only cook without meat, basically, and fish. And I don't know if you know what seitan is, or seitan. Seitan. I don't know how it's pronounced in English. It's this squishy thing. Do you know it?
Is it a vegetable?
No, it's made out of flour, basically. Yeah.
Okay.
And this is something really. It's so much fun to make, because it's basically like playing in the mud with your fingers. You have this squishy dough, and you let water run through it, and then it falls apart, and then it gets sticky again. It's crazy. And then you put that into a broth and let it cook for like an hour. Then you can use it for something else.
You typically have it like, if we had a flavor texture, sweet, sour, bitter. What are we looking at?
Mm-hmm. It's a bit like tofu. It doesn't have a flavor on itself, but you can infuse it with whatever you like, basically. Mm-hmm. So it's up to you. And good seitan needs to be fluffy and squishy, not the hard one. The hard one is really bad. And something else I really like to cook is self-made ravioli, or like pasta in general, because it's not that hard. It takes some time to do, but you can, with ravioli, you can be really creative and put in there whatever you like. That's something I really enjoy about cooking in general. It's really creative when you think about it. You have all these ingredients, and it's up to you what you do with them. It's really something.
We always say the big difference between cooking and baking is that cooking's an art where you don't really have to measure out portions. It's not like fine detail like baking. It's like 3 cups for this. And, it's more of an art and less of a science. So
yeah. So we have this like salt guy meme. Do you know it? So sometimes I feel like that when being in the kitchen, like being a real artist with paintbrush and a bit of here and bit of this spice, and turn this.
Have you seen Ratatouille?
Actually, I haven't. Yeah, it's still on my list. Yeah.
Okay, I need to get you a chef hat.
I have to watch that. Yeah.
What is your favorite book or podcast you've listened to recently?
I used to read a lot back in the days, but I don't have the time to do it anymore. But so an older book I really enjoyed, and the biggest I will ever read basically was The Wheel of Time. You can compare it a bit to Lord of the Rings. It's kind of the similar fantasy type vibe. And it's like 14 books, I think, 700 to 1,000 pages each. So it took me years to finish, but it was so amazing to read, and this world that the author created is, wow, it's just stunning. I really would like to know how he managed to, keep an overview of all the different characters and, the whole world. He must have had a huge gallery with like all the notes on the walls, I imagine.
World building is so fun. And
yes,
you see it in these big epics that people create. Tolkien, for example, with his Lord of the Rings series. But even as visual effects artists, like, you get to be part of that world building experience too. But I cannot believe that you read something that huge. Are you going to read it again someday?
No. But a recommendation for like a smaller trilogy. But even though the third book isn't out yet, and I hope it comes soon because I've been waiting for the third book for years now.
Yeah.
It's the Kingkiller Chronicles. The first book, I think, is it's Name of the Wind, and the second is A Wise Man's Fear. Presumably, the third one will be named The Doors of Stone. Yeah, I really enjoyed that one because what I liked about it is has a kind of magic that has a really deep, explained laws behind it. Like the conversation of energy is really important when wielding this kind of magic, and it's something like, as a VFX artist, I really enjoyed. Yeah.
What is your favorite video game effect that you're jealous of that isn't your own?
Well, these lighting questions are so tough. How can you answer them fast? Yeah, this is a really tough one, but I cannot make out a single effect. That's just not possible, right? I played a lot of Destiny and Destiny 2, and great game. I have so much respect for the devs there, and especially VFX team is amazing. So huge shout out. And I'm pretty much jealous of all. Like basically when you shoot an enemy in the head and they die, it has so much punch. It's amazing. I killed tens of thousands of enemies while playing Destiny, and it never got old. It's amazing. Fuck. And also awesome. I'm a huge fan of the Naughty Dog games. They're visually, we all know it, but they're just stunning.
Yeah. Best advice for a first-time visual effects artist or people looking to get into the industry?
Okay. I would say learn your basic animation principles, like really hand-drawn animation. The things you need to keep in mind there, you have to keep in mind for doing good VFX. And then also, it's more like a general thing, but you're not alone when you think you're not good enough. We had this topic before, but cannot stress this enough. Even, juniors think that a lot of time that they're not good enough for their job. You are, and you have a lot of time to prove that. And also, bit of the same is seniors have no clue what they are doing too, because they have just more experience being clueless. So that's something I learned myself while talking to a lot of other devs. It's always, how do you did that, and how are you so amazing? And they were always like, well, I had no clue. I just did the best.
I figured it out. Yeah.
Yeah, it's part of the job. It's not you who's being bad at it. And VFX related again, you won't exclusively work on fancy stuff. We had this before, but you will do a lot of not flashy stuff. It's a lot of small dust thingies, leaves, whatever, small fires, like make the world feel alive. And it's not all big explosions and magic spells. And it's okay to ask people for help. Most devs are super approachable if you are polite enough, and happy to help younger folks to really learn, get hold of the ropes, and learn to code a bit. It doesn't help. And even if you're afraid of it, a lot of artists are, it's not that bad, and it really helps a lot.
Cool. You give like 5 different things here, but I think all of them are equally important. It's really good to hear this, especially from somebody who's, quote, made it. You're out there and you're doing the work and you've created amazing products. So,
Thank you.
Right. What question do you never get asked that you wish you were asked more often?
Also something I have no specific answer to. I really can't think of anything concerning me personally, but in general, I would wish that a lot of gamers would be more interested in how games are made and what the people make them really are, or what the people are behind them. Because there's a lot of, it's a huge gap of knowledge, and the more knowledge the gamers have, it would automatically lead to more understanding and will form a better relationship between devs and gamers. And this is something that really isn't working right at the moment, I think.
I agree with that, but I would point it maybe to the direction of game journalist in a lot of ways.
Yeah, also, yeah.
There's a lot of sites out there, Metacritic, Kotaku, IGN, Polygon. They write reviews of games, but they don't understand the intricacies behind them a lot of times. So that is a big oversight, I feel. And, unfortunately, as you alluded to earlier, and maybe this is just something to think about, is like in an actual game development team, nobody knows what a VFX artist does except for the VFX artists. Like animators don't understand your job. 3D modelers, environmental artists, they don't understand your job. Sometimes, I don't know, there needs to be like a push from the VFX artists to educate their own team on like, this is what I do. And I'm sure there are studios out there that have like little like mini classes or academy sessions to like a week where it's like, here's what I do in the company and like, here's how I fit into the equation of like all the other positions and stuff. Because when everybody knows what everybody else's part in like the pie is, it just makes them a better and more cohesive team.
Yeah.
That was a bit of a tangent, but
an important one, I would say.
Cool. Florian, so I just want to open up the door for any kind of final thoughts that you may have or things you want to plug, pieces you want to promote, either in personal or professional work.
Yeah, to the people in the industry or people who are looking into entering the industry, don't be dicks. Help each other out, be inclusive, don't judge a book by its cover. There's no like typical dev. Every one of us is really different and we are all humans. It's really important to not forget that. The more diverse our industry gets, the bigger like our potential of the games we can create will be, I think. That's something it's really important to me. And because right now looking at The Last of Us, we have this huge, I don't want to call it a discussion because it is no discussion, like how females have to look and how traditional role models are portrayed in games. And we live in 2020. So much of this stuff so much of these opinions are, they're too old for this world. So yeah, leave them be. And something really important also is be kind to yourself, watch your health, and don't really compare yourself to others because we all have different limits. And the person next to you might be able to work 12 hours a day without blinking an eye. I wouldn't recommend that in any case, but there are people who can pull this off in a way. But you are not the person. And if you're more like you are done in like 7 hours, then yeah, it's okay. Just be honest to yourself. And if your environment you work in doesn't support you in this regard, it might not be the right place for you to work in. So,
Cool. And if people wanted to get in touch with you and follow up with maybe some of the things we talked about today, where's the best place to contact you, Florian?
I would say it's Twitter. How's my Twitter at? I think it's _SMOU.
I'll include a link in
the
description.
That. Yeah. So awesome. I have not come around to create an like ArtStation profile, and I will do it in the future, I think. But yeah, right now I didn't have the time for it.
Hey, Florian, it has been a pleasure to be able to talk with you and hear some of these awesome experiences that you have been in for the visual effects industry and just kind of sharing some of that knowledge of your life journey Thank you for being on this episode today.
Well, thank you really for like the chance to talk a bit about my job and how it is.
All right, you take care.
You too. Bye.
Thanks for listening to today's interview with Florian. He's a super cool guy. Definitely recommend getting a beer with him if you're in Germany. 2 things that Florian really said that stood out to me. Number 1, he said that a lot of effects that we create, we're always focused in on the flashy ones. And while that's definitely cool, a lot of the effects that we see are so subtle that we don't even notice them, at least visually, but we do feel them. And that subtlety is a craft in itself. So if you are a visual effects artist, understand that a lot of the work that you do is not going to be seen, but it's going to be felt. And that organicness of your effects is truly a work of magic. Number 2, Florian said, don't be a dick. The fact of the matter is that our industry is a lot smaller than we think. And when you form relationships with other FX artists and other people just in the games industry as a whole, your reputation matters. So be kind, be respectful, and be open-minded. It's super important that we help each other up and improve as individuals and not get so caught up in the competition and, the selfishness of the profession. Anyway, guys, I really enjoyed this. Until next time, rock on.